Viewers, as India is counting down to the mega G20 summit in a mega exclusive, Republic's senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor spoke to India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant on India's G20 presidency. Listen in.
In less than a week's time, G20 Leaders Summit is taking place in New Delhi. With us is someone who has been in the thick of it from the time India took over G20 presidency. The Sherpa of G20, Amitabh Kant. Very good noon, sir. And of course, I don't want the entire communique, but just tell us what's really going to be the New Delhi declaration about what's been India's impact on G20?
Well, let me first say that the declaration will be discussed by the leaders. They will finalize it. But through the ministerials, we've been very ambitious. We've been very action-oriented. We've been very inclusive. We've done our presidency very differently from other countries. We've made it a people's presidency. We've taken it to all the states and union territories. We've taken it to all the cities. In content, we've been very action-oriented. We've pushed a lot in terms of strong, sustainable, inclusive, and decisive growth. We've pushed a lot in terms of accelerating the pace of SDG implementation, which is very important in the post-COVID era. We've done a lot for multilateral institution reforms. We've done a lot for technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. We're pushing for a Green Development Pact, and we are also pushing for women-led development through women empowerment and equity. A lot has been pushed.
Going beyond these words, just for the benefit of viewers, if you could give one example each of what changes India has heralded in terms of technology adoption outside India?
So nobody had heard of digital public infrastructure. We built up layers of public interest on top of which private sector innovates. It's a model very different from the big tech model of USA and from the model which has been pursued in China. But India gave digital identity to all its citizens. It gives bank accounts, then it ensured fast payment, then it ensured credit flows, then it ensured insurance, then it ensured wealth creation in tier 2, tier 3 cities through digitization. All this is a unique model of digital public infrastructure. G20 has accepted the definition, the framework of digital public infrastructure, which can now go across the world.
Now, how would it go? Like, what would be the impact? How would it be translated into action and result on the ground?
So if you look at the world today, there are 4 billion people in the world who do not even have a digital identity. In India, everybody has a digital identity. 2 billion people do not have bank accounts. 133 countries do not have fast payments. What India has done is to ensure that we will be able to take this now that there will be a global architecture for digital public infrastructure. Today, there is no architecture for Global 5. Nobody accepts DPI. There's a vacuum. We fill that vacuum. Now we'll be able to take it to everyone in the world, and everybody will follow the digital public infrastructure. That is important. We've pushed a lot of our priorities, starting from DPI to millets to a whole range of our priorities, saying that this is what the world needs. We built an India narrative around G20, and that is important. We've brought in a human-centric approach. We've said that the voice of the Global South is very important. We've said that developing countries must have a voice, because this year 80% of the growth is coming from Global South. Next 2 decades, 2/3 of the growth will come from Global South. And therefore, it's important that we highlight that it's the developing countries which have strong young demographics. They will grow in the future. We brought that center stage. The Prime Minister wrote to all the countries that African Union should be a permanent member.
Right.
And African Union becoming a permanent member, which has been widely reciprocated by all the leaders, will send a huge impact across the world.
Is that happening?
That is being discussed, and during the leaders' declaration you'll get to see. But there's been a huge positive response.
Well, what we would want to understand is that we might have had these wishes earlier also. What has changed between earlier and now that people are listening? When you say DPI, they accept. Why? When you say changes in the multilateral development bank mechanism, people listen. Why? Why these changes are happening? For example, when you say African Union should be accepted, Why is it that India's voice is being heard?
Well, several reasons, one of which is that we are a vibrant democracy. Our political leadership is an elected leadership whose public rating is still very high at about 80%. It's unparalleled. Secondly, the political leadership, the political narrative that you build up is strong. Secondly, I think the important thing is that the development story, that you've built 40 million houses, you've done 110 million toilets, you've done 225 million piped water connection, you do 46% of the digital payments, you've done 88,000 kilometers of roads. All this is a phenomenal story of development. The infrastructure that India has created is unparalleled. And therefore, the world listens to you because you are the 5th largest economy. You will soon be the 3rd largest economy. And therefore, you've accelerated the pace of your growth and the world is listening to you.
So we have delivered at home and the people believe that we can deliver outside also.
Yes, that's what I feel. They have faith in India.
Yeah.
When you negotiate with them, they feel that we are trustworthy.
Yeah.
We brought a human-centric approach, as the Prime Minister says.
Yeah. So nobody knows it better than you what kind of faith India enjoys, because in those Sherpa meetings that you have had, and all these Sherpas speak directly to their own leaders.
Yeah.
What has been your experience of their view of India, and hence through them the views of their respective leaderships about India?
Well, they have a very positive, very constructive approach towards India. They feel if anyone can bring in the developmental agenda, bring in the agenda of the developing countries, if anybody can bring transformation in the emerging countries, it's India. But for the first time, you have 4 emerging markets, one after another: Indonesia, India, Brazil, South Africa. So G20 is increasingly becoming the voice of the emerging markets.
All right. And what kind of challenges you faced dealing with the Sherpas, given the pushes and pulls of the geopolitics? G20 essentially is a geo-economic grouping, but then there are pulls and pressures of geopolitics as well. So you would have faced some challenges during your meetings to sort of keep everyone together, to not let tempers fray. If you could just share some aspects of how you really kept things going.
No, there are huge challenges. There are huge challenges. Firstly, because this is about bringing everybody on board. It's about building a consensus. So 20 plus 9 invited countries. Mm-hmm. Now 29 countries means, consensus means everybody has a veto power. So you have to bring everybody on board. You have to bring consensus amongst everybody. And everybody is at a different stage of development. Everybody has different national circumstances. Mm-hmm. So that is the challenge.
You mean to say everyone has a veto, like
yes,
it's absolutely unanimous decision, then only it goes into the
absolutely.
Joint statement?
It's a joint statement, it's a co-creation process. Everybody has to agree.
So let me make this a little more specific before I move on. So what kind of shadow of the ongoing Europe war had on the dialogue that you were having, and how you sort of navigated that? So
there's a challenge of the war. It's not our creation, it's other people's creation, but there are consequences of the war, and therefore the consequences of the war on food, fuel, fertilizer, all these are major challenges. And therefore, while G20 is an economic grouping, it is not a political grouping. The United Nations and United Nations Security Council is a political grouping.
Right.
But last year in Bali, we fell on the UN resolution and quoted that resolution.
Yes.
But after that, Russia and China have not been accepting that. And therefore, in all our ministerials, we've been very ambitious. We've got everything through, except that particular issue.
Yes.
So that will come up for discussion. But our view is that our Delhi declaration should be full of developmental, ambitious issues on growth, prosperity, citizens of the world, developing countries, green development, issues of women empowerment. Those are very important for us, not one para of the Ukraine war.
Understood. My second last question, sir. The way G20 panned out during India's presidency, what kind of impact it's going to have on the global stage in terms of, for example, is G20 now a little more relevant and important than G7?
Well, I think G20 is more important than United Nations. G20 is more important than the United Nations Security Council because this has both G7 and emerging markets. This has all developing countries, so they bring together. Now with African Union also becoming a permanent member, it'll have a huge voice and it'll represent almost 90% of the global GDP. So it's a very, very important body to my mind.
Can we expect that this is going to have impact on how the reshaping of the United Nations architecture happens?
Of course.
It should happen.
It should have. It should be a voice to ask for a change.
Right. Well, my last question, looking inwards, you made it a people's presidency. Prime Minister said it should be action-oriented, result-oriented, and a people's presidency, people should be involved. I was going through one of your tweets where you were talking about a G20 road in Lucknow. A road has been named G20.
Yes.
So what's your feedback like? How have the people been involved and what are their thoughts?
So this is the first time the Prime Minister decided as a leader to take G20 to the citizens of India.
Yeah.
Not only did we take it to the states and 60 cities and all the states and UTs, but we took it to every school, every college, every university. Model G20s were held, essay competitions were held. It was a path-breaking. This kind of G20 has not been held anywhere in the world.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kant, for joining us and sharing this very important inputs and information.